Welcome to the Masterplan, a property podcast. I'm Rebecca Shackleton from Polka Dot Property.
And I'm Nikita Jenkin from Scouted Recruitment.
Nikita and I have come together to do this podcast with a goal of unpicking the complexities and the nuances of the property industry. We want to do that by interviewing guests who will offer insights on the industry and their career journeys.
We're really excited to have you on this journey with us, and we're going to have a lot of fun along the way.
Nikita and I are excited to have Oscar Stanley with us today. Oscar joined ABN Group as General Manager of Development following a decade of acquiring and managing some of Victoria's most well-known and complex projects. Previously a Senior Development Manager at Stockland, Oscar oversaw Highlands, one of Australia's best-known and award-winning masterplanned communities. Following his time at Stockland, Oscar joined ID Land, where he was introduced to the private property sector. He managed 6 active projects from end to end across both greenfield and infill suburbs. Now with ABN Group, Oscar works across Homebuyers Centre, boutique homes and Resolve Finance. In his role as General Manager, he's driven to deliver quality, affordable homes and townhouses to the market. Welcome, Oscar.
Hello, ladies. How are you?
We're really well. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. An absolute honour.
Very excited. Are you excited?
I am. I was doing my homework this morning, listened to Nick's episode one, and hadn't spoken to Nick in a long time, but love the content, and I'm very happy to be here.
Brought back some good memories,
absolutely.
Highlands memories.
Yeah, he said Highlands. It took me way back to the barn, sitting out there in Craigieburn, the lake, delivering the dream.
Good times.
I'm the fourth wheel here. I haven't worked on Highlands.
But we're going to take you out there. I'm going to take you on a road trip to Highlands.
Yeah.
We'll go to the barn. We'll go to the cafe.
The barn?
It was the sales office, but we used to work out there. We were on site, close to the community.
Yeah.
You know, we'd do the sausage sizzles out the back door. And
Why is it called the barn?
Does it look like a barn?
Oh, okay. Fair enough. I'm excited to see the barn in Craigieburn, but excited to talk to you, Oscar, the man, the myth, the legend.
Don't know about that.
That's what people say. So just wanted to maybe start with, do you want to give us a bit of a summary or a bit of an introduction into how you got into property?
Yeah. At school, I was an absolute nerd, so loved my maths and physics and chemistry, and was on that journey to be an engineer, you know, as you do. Career advisor said that was best for me. So got into my degree at Melbourne Uni and then did a gap year, and the perspective that 12 months gave me, it's like, I'm kind of too defined in what I'm actually going for. I'm passionate about it, and at that point in time, they offered a double degree with property. So I thought I'll just do that. I'd always had an interest in property, and from day one, I just really felt like the people side of those 2 degrees were very different, and I found myself very much sitting on the property side. And so as I went through that double degree, I just got more and more committed to exploring the world of property and construction, and less passionate about the numbers. So that kind of led me to bit of work experience with some big construction businesses like Multiplex. Worked out, really didn't love that side of things, you know, the unionised sites. And
what kind of roles were you in?
Oh, literally, you know, carting around concrete. And
I thought you were going to say coffees then.
No, that would have been easier. No, I was labouring just with a friend, and just to get some experience on what these sites were like. And my time ended in construction when I actually had a wet concrete, barrel load of wet concrete, these little elevators that go up the side of the buildings under construction called Alimax. There's a big Russian guy in there called Goran, who's about 8 foot tall, and I kind of went in too fast, and the wet concrete filled up to his ankles.
Oh, poor Goran.
Yeah, poor Goran, poor Oscar.
Was he mad?
So yeah, he was not happy. So he didn't let me in he didn't let me in his little elevator for the next 3 weeks, and so
Did he get out of the elevator? Is Goran still in that elevator?
He could
somewhere?
be. He was getting paid so much, I don't think he'd ever leave. But so that really led me down a path of what else is
unemployment
out here.
is where it led you.
Definitely not labouring. So to cut a long story short, I had a really good friend who had just started with Stockland, and at the time I was still studying and never heard of Stockland, had no idea what that business was. And at the time, I think there was about 30 people in Victoria in the business in St Kilda Road. A man by the name of Brad Padden, who now runs APD, interviewed me. He was a bright-eyed guy from Perth that was running a project down in Point Lonsdale. It was very complex and going through a fairly interesting planning process. And he said, mate, if you want to learn the industry, come and join me. And this one's got the full Monty. So started working with Stockland while finishing off my degree. And
Brad's a fun guy to work with.
He was brilliant.
So good introduction into the industry.
Yeah.
So what role did you start in?
Little development assistant, earning, less than I was labouring with Goran, and but just loved it. Like straight away, I guess that land development, the people once again really attracted me to that industry. And I very early on, and I know Nick mentioned mentors, but very early on, without me really formally getting a structure in place, I had some brilliant early mentors and likes of Ken Breeze from Breeze Pick Dixon on the engineering side, and there's a guy called Don Mazzone from Clayton Utes on the legal side. And there's some incredible people, obviously, at Stockland being very supportive. So I just felt like I fell into this, really supportive environment that it was really pushing me to learn quickly and get up to speed. So
I think that's a theme that we've seen with chatting with Nick and our other guests as well, is having the right support and mentorship at a young age at these pivotal moments. And luckily enough, going into environments where that is available to you, but having that sets you up.
I think we were really fortunate back then because Stockland really wrapped a huge amount of support around all of their people, and it was that, but it was also the team culture. It was the friendships that we made and still have today. 20 years down the track.
100%.
So I hope that people that are starting out are still getting that same level of support, but I suspect it's probably changed a little bit.
Well, 30 people to how many are there?
No idea. I mean, we do a lot of work with that company now on the other side of the fence, and that's incredible how it's grown into many different facets of Victoria, and they're the largest diversified developer in Australia. So,
How did you move into the acquisition space?
It was just an itch, and I think acquisitions, I think it's really seen as being at the front end. It's that opportunity to be really driving a business forward, and I always, loved the sense of a deal. So, I think that genuine business acumen, feasibility, cash flow was something I always, once again, being a bit of a numbers guy, always felt quite attracted to. And the opportunity just arose. There was obviously a mandate to grow the Victorian business. So they were growing a team and jumped across there just after Point Lonsdale got its approvals and started in the acquisitions team. So
do you think there's a personality or a positioning or a motivation? Because not everyone can jump into, and I guess a select few do make it. What do you think it was that you had that gave you that?
I think a little bit was right time, right place, right time. But it's certainly, if you can get some experience in acquisitions, and it doesn't need to be a full-time role. A lot of people can assist in these types of roles and get the experience of what makes projects work and start getting that understanding of, sensitivities. If I change this, what is the impact on our returns? I think it's a very beautiful
putting
way.
Your hand up to learn from others.
Absolutely. And,
and it's all aspects. It's the feasibility. Is the project going to be profitable? How many lots do we need to build into the... So it's really, from a development manager to go into the acquisition space, it's giving them a broad understanding of the entire financial complexities of a project, kind of beyond a stage and beyond all of those kind of smaller bits and pieces.
It's certainly, once you transition from acquisitions into development, it gives you a appreciation of, what the base assumptions were, whether they're right or wrong, and what drives ultimately the profitability of a project. So,
but also that people aspect. You said the relationships with landowners and sales consultants and agencies, and being a people person is probably an important aspect.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of doors opened just due to the fact that it was Stockland. But even then, there was doors you'd knock on and they'd invite you in, probably huffing and puffing under their breath, and you'd give them your little business card and they'd put in a Teledex of 5,000 other business cards and you'd have a quick chat. But there is an element of sales to instilling trust in people. These are big decisions, when you're dealing with a landowner that may not be in the industry. So there was a lot of relationship building, and, that the difference I think that some great acquisition managers have is a real passion for the people, what their motivation is, and the land, like actually kicking the dirt and walking, talking about the tractor. Why have you got that ute? What's happening with the cattle? Like, it's, if you see the people that have really been successful in this space,
That was my next question.
Yeah.
Why the move back to
It was just
development?
market conditions, just there wasn't the same appetite for a period. So, the team was deployed elsewhere and it was my opportunity to jump across into development, which I was super excited about. And, particularly to be on a project like Highlands, not to go back on ground covered, but, quite an iconic project and something that a lot of people over many years had set up this beautiful community. So to take that on was a real responsibility that I really enjoyed, and we had a terrific team out there rolling out, an amazing vision that others had set up. But to be able to be part of that and see it continue on, and the next precinct now releasing in Craigieburn West, it just continues. So
7 years, long stint.
Yep,
But then you moved across to ID Land.
correct.
So what was the reasoning behind that?
Well, straight out of uni, it was my only job I'd ever had, and a couple of gentlemen, Matt and Jeff, went out and started their own business that were at Stockland, and it was an opportunity to kind of get involved in a different part of the industry, being obviously a small startup private. So that was obviously appealing, and then just the nature of their projects with some built form and some other aspects, finance, and you do get, in some aspects, you get a bit sheltered in those bigger corporate businesses. The money comes from Sydney, Stockland's example, and there's not too much exposure as to where that money comes from, at what rate, who they're talking to. It's such a big business. So I was really, with ID Land, I was down at Officeworks in the morning picking up the pens, and then at the end of the day you're meeting with the bank talking about what lending options we've got. Exactly, the full end-to-end kind of development cycle, which was what I was looking for.
Do you think that's the biggest difference between publicly listed and private sector, is just having more exposure to more things in the private sector?
Yeah, I think it depends, because ABN Group, and we'll get to where I am now, it's a big private business. So, I think it's more to do with the scale of the business as to what you have access to.
Yeah.
And, the bigger the business is, the more specialised people can be. But, I think my time at ID just taught me, quick decision making, pretty amazing business model that was moving rapidly, compared to a bigger listed entity, which has to be more measured with their decision making. It was a very different environment, and I guess where I've ended up is probably a mixture of the two. It's a big private company that gives a lot of autonomy to the people to make decisions and get on with it, but at the same time, we've got our lanes, and we know what the business is trying to achieve. So I think I've seen a good variety of business models, but that's probably the biggest difference, is the scale.
That's definitely what I saw as well in terms of private versus publicly listed. It's just the ability to make decisions quickly when you're in a smaller business, and less red tape, and just you can move forward a lot faster. Which is good.
But I think Andrew Whitson, who's still there at Stockland, I remember when market was changing quite rapidly, he certainly was like, I'd prefer you to make 100 decisions quickly and 20 of them to be wrong than sit around trying to make one perfect decision. Yeah. So certainly that's something that I learned, even in those big businesses, that you can still make a lot of decisions with the right people as your leaders. So, I've kind of taken that mantra.
Another theme of leadership and, getting that, having someone to show you the way, but not micromanage or allow you to make your own decisions.
Yeah, a license to make calls and fall over. And I guess what I do with my team is, like, I want you to be, if you're not making decisions and making mistakes, you're not moving fast enough. Just don't make the same mistake twice, and we're all good.
So then after ID Land, a few years there, over to ABN.
Yeah.
So the last 8 years.
Yes. Yep, that's correct. Time flies when you're having fun. But, I had an opportunity to jump across to the dark side. I'm a land rat at heart, but I never thought I'd end up on the builder side of the equation. But I guess my time with ID, I got involved in building those relationships with all the different builder partners, and I struck a relationship with Aidan Hooper, who's the managing director here in Victoria, and there was an opportunity to come across and I guess bring a land lens to everything that business does, because ultimately every house needs a block of dirt, right? So they're quite linked, and as we've seen with product types and the trends over the last 8 years, it's getting more and more linked because of affordability, land sizes on average are more than 150 square metres less than 8 years ago. So,
But the other thing that you must report was your relationships in the land side of the business as well, and being able to really quickly hit the ground running, and you had all of the relationships already.
Yeah.
So that must have been pretty appealing to ABN.
Totally. I mean, once again, ABN already had some terrific relationships, and I was kind of grabbing onto a baton. But the reality was, we knew really clearly who our key partners should be, and who we maybe weren't doing enough work with. And there was a lot of work in that first year, just making sure that our strategy, which was all based on fewer friends, better friendships, like let's just do it beautifully for a few that we know are really well aligned with us. And it comes down to people as well as, geographic diversity, scale and complexity of their business. But at the end of the day, it's the people. We've got a no dickheads policy at ABN, and that's within the business and the people we deal with.
It's sometimes difficult in property to facilitate that policy.
Well, and as a recruiter, you'll appreciate we don't always get it right, but they always get found out. I find in a good business, what I've seen is that they always get found out, and I think that I get up every morning excited to work with my team and the people I deal with. I love, so that's a pretty cool starting point to a day.
And I think part of that must be the strategies that you've got in place to bring the right people into the team. So can you talk about that in terms of who do you try and attract? What types of people do you try to bring into the ABN team? Because everybody that I've met at ABN are all amazing people. So you do an excellent job, and they will have a lot of
retention.
fun.
Yeah, retention's been excellent, and particularly at the more senior level. I do think it comes down to culture fit. I think people throw around culture at a company level, pretty flippantly, but I think cultural fit is very important. And I think there's obviously bad culture and good culture, but there's the right culture. And there is certainly an ABN culture that people are attracted to, which means we don't use you as much as we probably should.
That's
Nikita.
right. I'm knocking on your door, but everyone's very happy.
Yes, well, just as long as you're knocking to provide opportunities, not take them away.
Never.
But ultimately, our strategy has been pretty consistent, where we look for parallel industries where people have a skill set and experience, but really it starts with culture and cultural fit. So, an example is in the sales team. We might not go and get someone who's sold property before, but they may have sold at Harvey Norman, or they've sold in a car yard.
Yep.
But they're the right cultural fit. In our customer service team might be someone that's been in hospitality or been a concierge at a hotel. But it allows us to bring in people that are new to the industry, maybe have a more of a runway as far as what they can earn, just the nature of the industry we're in. But we can teach them the way we do things, and they're not coming in with a history of maybe some bad habits. Potentially.
Oscar, not to toot my own horn, that's it. But I did start in the car industry. I was an aftermarket sales girl for quite a while, and then I sold cars for a little bit. I also dipped my toe in real estate. But this is what I tell people in recruitment is that, and every single industry, every role, everything is really sales, marketing and relationships. And the car sales industry gave me that platform to where I haven't been in the recruitment industry very long, but I'm very competitive with people who have. And I'm happy to say that I'm doing very well, but that's because of my sales training and my background. And I guess, my first role in property recruitment, or my first role in recruitment in general, was a manager taking a risk and bringing me on board, not having experience, but having the attitude, the motivation and the sales mind. And here I am. So I guess.
So can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What is the margin on the tint upgrade aftermarket?
Okay. So look, I'll give you a secret here. Tint specifically, aftermarket and dealerships don't make money on. The tint is a throw-in, and it's everything else. It's your paint protection, it's your interior, and actually I really do like these products, but you got to believe in your product, right?
You're selling me.
Yeah. But the car industry is a very particular type of industry, and people do not get paid very well, but they're worked very, very hard.
Yeah.
So it is a great platform to
there's
take.
parallel industries, and they're really, really
And I
great
guess
pool.
that's what breeds loyalty, when you give people an opportunity who would not otherwise think that they would get an opportunity to move into a completely different category.
Yeah.
You know, if you give someone a go, like you did, Nikita, getting into recruitment, and like your team have from other industries, that makes them feel very loyal to
and
to
guess
the
what?
business.
They've all got friends, and it becomes quite a powerful attraction, proposition. And some of our most successful have come from being an Uber driver or Harvey Norman or whatever, and they've made this incredible life for themselves. And it's quite humbling to kind of see.
So that's the sales team.
Yeah.
In property and in your other roles in development, did you have the same vision or same ideology about recruiting people into development roles?
Yeah. So we've got a small development team. It's probably more relevant for the building team, which is obviously a huge part of our workforce. So we've got 700 or so people here in Victoria, and the majority would sit in that builder and customer service team and the operational back of house. And that is a bit of a different beast because there's quite specific skill sets that you need. You're not just going to give anyone a hammer, even though we don't own a hammer. We're site managers that are very good at what they do. But it is a bit more difficult. And then it comes down to training. And it's really, okay, you can pick a great person, but they might have to spend 3 months. And we've got one of the best training guys in, I think, Australia, who's been with us forever and takes all of our people through, no matter what their experience, the way we build houses. And they'll spend 3 months with us before they are let free to do anything.
But that's another great philosophy, is putting the time into people and not expecting everyone to come on board knowing everything. And, we use this phrase relentlessly, hit the ground running. But some people with a little bit of time and care and dedication and education will hit the ground running and run faster than everyone else.
Yeah. I think it's that balance. I think culture is your number one, cultural fit, but then you've got to support it with training, development, and also, just the expectation of how quickly they can have an impact.
And I'm really interested, and I've always wondered this about ABN. So you've got your 3 brands. You've got Boutique Homes, Homebuyers Centre, Resolve Finance.
Yes.
The culture between Boutique Homes and Homebuyers, does it get competitive? How do you manage that? You have to manage both teams. So how do you kind of keep the team, really positive and happy and friendly, but then sort of when they're competing against each other?
It's fascinating, and it's evolved. I think 8 years ago, Homebuyers Centre was, it was a bit of a footy club. It had a certain team, and they were highly successful, highly competitive. There's always friction there, but ultimately, over time, we've seen those barriers really drop to a point that the referral business between our brands are at the highest point it's ever been, and we've got a state ABN sales manager now, Michael McCourt, who kind of sits over both teams. So, it's a lot more harmonious, believe it or not.
Can I ask, what is the difference between the brands?
Absolutely. So,
because to me, it's all just, home building, but what is the nuances between?
Yeah, so I guess the 2 brands have 2 very different customers they're targeting. The reality is the quality is the same. So as far as, someone using a good site manager versus a bad site manager, our guys build everything, so guys and girls. The reality is it's the size of the home and the specification that just allows the price point to be an entry level versus someone that's a bit more aspirational.
So it's more a design.
Design-led.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And market positioning. I guess Boutique Homes has always been positioned as a more premium brand.
Yes.
And Homebuyers Centre, a first home buyer.
Yeah,
brand.
more solution focused. So, a home buyer customer probably is sitting on a couch at the moment and they don't really know that they can afford a house. So it's a very different marketing strategy because you're trying to get someone to engage that they're thinking they need to save a 10% deposit to go and buy.
Well, this is me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Can I buy a house?
Have you got $5,000 in the bank?
I do.
Well, we're on.
I should.
After this podcast, you'll have heaps more than that, right?
Yeah, 7,000.
But that's the reality, and this is where Resolve.
Can you
comes
imagine if I buy a house out of this?
You're going to Craigieburn. We've got
Highlands. I don't want to live in Craigieburn.
No, you do. You don't know how good it is.
Yeah, I don't.
So certainly the Resolve. This is where the Resolve influence on our business, and Resolve has been around since 1990, really to service the building brands that sit within the ABN Group. And we're only a very small part of the overall pie, and ABN's history is very much centred in Perth. Kind of started in the 1970s.
Like every good candidate, everyone in development is from Perth. We talk about this all the time. Yeah. It's something in the water.
Yeah, so there's certainly that Western Australian influence has been strong, and Aiden's been over here when they bought boutique homes for about 13 years ago. So certainly we've bought over brands and people and ideas, but the Resolve influence on what we do, particularly in that Homebuyers brand, has just been core to its success because, as we've seen, finance is such a big driver to people's confidence, what they can purchase, sentiment in the market, and it's allowed us to really, even in the current environment with interest rates bouncing around, sit down and have high quality conversations around what it means for each of our customers and how that might influence their decision making. So, Resolve's a huge part of what we do. They're lending over $1.4 billion a year now as a mortgage broker. So they've got scale and some great people in there that really support what we do.
And confidence is a really interesting topic given, the market at the moment, some of the challenges that we've seen play out over the last few weeks. How do you build confidence with customers? And are customers coming to you feeling anxious about going forward?
Absolutely. I think each customer has they have their own story. And I think we've certainly had some customers come back to us over the recent events and ask some really relevant questions around the risk they're taking in building and buying off the plan. I think all we can do is talk to our history. We've completed 85,000 homes. We've kind of been around for a very long time. The two owners of the business are highly involved in the day-to-day business, and we're investing in the business. We just opened an office in Geelong, about to go through a huge technology transformation at massive investment back in the business. There's only so much you can do. Yeah. So at the end of the day, we're never going to force a customer to build with us.
No.
So, we're very much saying, hey, we've got a lot of activity happening at the moment. We can talk to our build times and give you confidence in what we're doing. But if you're not comfortable to proceed, let's have a conversation about that. And we're not really seeing cancellations kind of reflect what I thought the anxiety would have driven. Yeah. So I think it comes very hands-on. And that's why you need a lot of people in a building company. That the customer journey is so detailed. You actually are dealing with them in so much detail with colour selections and every single detail. So we have a lot of people to keep our customers happy and tucked in. But I feel like, considering the current environment, we're doing it pretty well.
Yeah. Oscar, can I ask some of the comparisons or things that you've come across working for developer and working for builder? So that comparison, because as you said in the beginning, moving to the dark side, and this is the assumption that, a lot of people in development have, I don't want to work for a builder or I don't want to work for a builder developer, but there's a lot of assumptions about one and the other.
Yeah, they're totally different business. The biggest one is just the moving parts and the amount of people. So, if you look at just revenue and turnover, a builder at our scale, needs 700 people to run it. But a developer at the same turnover might need 25 and a great marketing team.
And a great recruiter adding in there, finding them these people to do this.
But the reality is it's just a totally different business model. One's debt funded, the other one's probably cash flow funded. So there's a lot of nuances between the two. I just find in the building game, there's just way more moving parts. Like, it's actually a very complex business model, and you can kind of sympathise with the industry at the moment that the complexities on top of inflation and trade issues and supplying of materials and everything else. And by no means am I saying land development's easy, but certainly it's just a lot.
Once I said that to a client and I got a very long detailed email of how complex.
There's a few things
it's not just cutting up shapes.
Yeah, there's a few things under the road and a few things to do before you get to build it. But yeah, I just find for me, ultimately the two are moving closer together. But the two are coming closer together. And we've seen businesses try and do each other's work, some being successful, others haven't. But certainly the relationship and built form informing what shapes are being cut up, certainly that needs to be done better throughout the industry. if you look at where planning's going and the requirements around density, you know, even if you're a land developer that wants nothing to do with the builder and you just want to stick to the land ratting, you're still going to need to understand what that end product roughly looks like. Otherwise, you're going to get a permit that's potentially not worth as much as it should be because it hasn't been informed by the right product decisions. So,
I was at the Urban Developer residential summit the other day, and it was a fantastic event. I really enjoy their events, and everything the speaker said, but different.
Are they almost as good as UDI events?
I want to say potentially better.
Ooh,
controversial.
We're going to cut this.
Look, I'm happy to say I feel like potentially because they're a private, obviously, organisation, I feel like potentially speakers feel a little bit more open and like they have to be less politically correct so people can have controversial opinions. And that's as a person who attends an event, you want to hear something interesting, you know, not just the same.
All right, well, this is the challenge. I'm going to make the next UDI event fully controversial.
Please.
Controversial.
Please do.
All right.
Have Nikita up there, sure.
I would host one of these things.
Let's do a podcast live at the UDA.
That's all right.
Oh my God, we could.
We'll see how it goes. Maybe the master plan is the next MC.
Or a sponsor, yeah. But what they were saying was 900,000, dwellings are needed because of all the migration, et cetera, by 2030. So to me, land developers are not becoming obsolete, but they're going to have to diversify and bring on some sort of built form to keep up with demand because just naturally you probably won't be able to be just a land developer when the demand is for built form product.
Yeah, I mean, no one wants to block a land. The industry's always needed each other. And I think developers they're the best to do this work. We're not going to go and start trying to be a developer. It's a very different mindset, even though my background's in that world. It's just a totally different business model. So developers will be needed more than ever to bring on that supply. And the reality is in the current environment with affordability, it's an absolute crisis at the moment. You look at where prices have gone for house and land packages and townhouses, and then you overlay that through our Resolve business, what people can actually lend. The equation just doesn't quite add up at the moment. So
what can I get with that 5,000?
I can get you a
3 bedrooms.
Yeah, 18 square townhouse with a view of a park in Craigieburn. Walking distance to everything you need.
No. Think about it.
Oscar, do you think, obviously there's a lot of talk in the industry about build to rent and, the financial viability of build to rent compared to, this is apartments obviously, which is a little bit different.
Yeah.
But do you see that as an opportunity for greenfields, having kind of long-term secure rental accommodation?
It's a fascinating question, Beck, and you've probably got more experience in this sector than I do, but certainly we're watching that very closely because there will be a horizontal model of some form in the future, I've got no doubt.
There has to be, because people that need that secure tenure are often families that want their kids to go to the same school. They may not be in the position to buy a home, although if they only need $5,000 may not know that they're in a position to buy a home. And that's going to be, I think, the complexity between the two as well is actually you can buy and you don't have to be a long-term renter.
Can I have a backyard though? Because I have 2 dogs. I don't have kids, but I have 2 dogs.
And we've got a little doggy bathroom upgrade you can do.
Is that boutique or is that
all right, we can do
Homebuyers?
that.
It was a boutique. It's pretty good.
That was a really popular social trend, that one.
Yeah.
So, but I think to your question, it's a totally different capital arrangement, as you know, through your experience, Beck. And there's going to need to be, I think it needs to be proven in the apartment world before we can get too excited about what it means for greenfield.
So you'd have to look at MD.
Yeah, I think it'll be density at scale, and I think it needs to be built out at scale, which needs a lot of capital, and that's where the metrics have to make up as far as a long-term return. I think there's no doubt there's an opportunity there in the future. At the moment, we'll just sit back and see how it rolls out.
I'm going to ask a question here, and I may sound silly,
but that's your job.
This is my vibe. Yeah, to ask the silly questions. When you say density at scale,
yes, what
do you mean by at scale?
Well, for us, a townhouse run might be 10 in a row, and then that's not scale for us. We kind of see 50 to 100 plus.
So by saying at scale, you mean the largest amount possible for that area?
Yeah, like co-located precincts that might sit around some amenity.
So there again, co-located.
Yeah.
What is the English word for that?
Just they all together.
Okay. So this is one thing we were talking about earlier is the
language.
The language.
Yeah.
And, again, me asking silly questions, but which someone may understand, because someone may understand how to speak Chinese or French, but
seriously,
I don't. So.
I did French up to year 10 and then I went to Stockland and I learned a whole nother language, right?
Yeah.
So the reality is the industry is obsessed with its own language. And I get it. It's easy. And once you're in the lingo, it makes things easy and off you go. But bloody hell, it's hard. And particularly when you're bringing people out of industry, as I mentioned before.
Recruiters. So clients talk to me and I nod my head and I have to then go back and Google and be like, what on earth were they talking about? I have no idea. Candidates as well.
So I think, Beck and I had a quick chat before. We have a glossary of terms because it is literally like, you need a dictionary and it's not an ABN thing, it's an industry-wide thing.
Business idea.
Here we go.
The ABN dictionary.
There you go. I'm happy to flick it around to all your listeners.
Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of good acronyms that I can add in as well.
Well, there's recruiter ones as well. There's things we say and people go like, oh, what do you mean?
Yeah, but I think, that is part of it. I think what I like to do with new people that come into the business is just like, if we're in a meeting, if there's anything you don't understand, just write it down and we'll catch up afterwards and we'll go through it because the quicker you can jump on it, what ends up happening is people get into a business, they get 2 or 3 months in and they haven't quite worked it out yet and then it becomes awkward.
Yeah.
What do you mean you don't know what a PCG is or a PSP or we can go on and on and on. So
I've been recruiting in property development for a year and a half before I did, or nearly 2 years before I did that course and I learnt PSP. Precinct structure plan.
Well done. You're all over it.
Thank you, Ken Munro.
What's a DCP?
Design construct plan?
No, but close. But no,
we're PG. We can swear.
But the reality is, it is difficult for people to integrate into the industry. I think you just got to give new people, the license to once again.
I think that's part of culture and that's part of building a really great culture is giving people that opportunity to say, hey, it's okay that you don't know.
Yep.
Ask the question. Let's make sure that we make time together, write everything down, ask me anything you need to. And that is where people come into a business and they go, I actually feel really relieved that I'm somewhere that's supportive and is going to,
I feel like we've got an extra theme in both our episode with Nick and our episode here with Oscar in that leadership and being a good leader and being an understanding leader, maybe this is a precursor to a management course, our podcast, because there are a lot of people out there in management positions who don't understand ethos. It's
an interesting debate because in a growing business, which obviously ABN has been over the last 5 years, we've learned a lot of lessons, and the reality is some technical experts just need to be better technical experts, and we should be able to give them a runway that allows them to be the best nerd in whatever part of the business they're in. They don't necessarily have to go and manage people to get that next opportunity. And I think
often they can't.
Well, this is the shift. You just can't expect that person to be able to manage people well. And we know the number one reason why people hang around in business is because of their immediate manager. So it's such a hard balance because that person's a fabulous operator. You want to give them new opportunities.
Yeah.
The business has to have the confidence to say, no, you just keep running. We'll pay you more because you are so good at that.
So it's changing that mindset of you have to have a big team underneath you to be successful. Well, no, actually you don't. You just need to be really, really good at what you do.
I think sometimes it's the mindset of the actual person in knowing reflecting on yourself and knowing what your skill sets are and that maybe you are not meant to manage people.
Yeah.
I am not meant to manage people. I am numero uno and I say that I am not a manager. Yeah. I don't care what other people do. I only care about myself in a nice way. But I would never want to be put in that position, whereas I think a lot of people don't have that self-awareness or they think the only way to get ahead is to be a manager.
But it is the only way to get ahead in a lot of businesses, and ABN's been the same in the past. You've got a band. If you're doing that role, then you've got a band to there, and then you hit a ceiling. Whereas the value that person's adding might be twice the person next to them. So why can't they earn more? So it's a really interesting debate at the moment, particularly when you've got this new complex management relationship with people working remotely and from home, and there's less contact points, and how do you actually mentor people and coach effectively and provide all this amazing flexibility. we need to let experts be experts. And I think it's just an ongoing debate that I think businesses need to battle with because, as you said, Nikita, you'd be a terrible boss.
Oh, absolutely. But you know what I am? A great employee.
There you go.
I am a fantastic.
So Jeremy just needs to keep just paying you more.
Yes,
Yeah.
Jeremy, are you listening? Thank you. Have you had can you tell us any horror stories? You don't have to name names. Have you had any terrible bosses or if you'd like to talk about some great bosses?
No, I think we'll keep it on the positive side. Certainly I've had different people inspire me along the way. To call out one person in particular, I mean, Aidan, obvious is like my current boss, but, what attracted me to go across to the dark side was him and the culture that he created. And I think following maybe the right people, for me, that's so driven by energy and culture, that was the right call for me necessarily than going, well, is this exactly the right job for me? And I think, I'd seen it play out with ABN when I was outside of the company, but just the ability for people to kind of build a business around themselves and almost, they'll throw someone into a role and it's like, well, you make it what you want. And that's what really I felt, once again had that license to just go on and get stuff done. And, he's been a great supporter of me and my team and the growth that we've achieved. And, certainly that's the first one that comes to mind. But then throughout, like there's 20 people that I could list that have, relationship, business acumen, socially, I think there's been a lot of people that have influenced what I've done. But I still go back to that first year at Stockland and learning the basics of good relationships and just little things like, developers have a lot of consultants that they use. And, the reality is, how often does a developer go to the consultant's office? And how genuine is the relationship you're building?
That's so true. It's so one-sided.
So one-sided. So, I would make sure anyone in my team, at least once a quarter, would have a meeting with their consultants in the consultant's office. And I don't know, if that means your file comes to the top of the pile, more than others, the impact that has on the business could be massive.
Yeah.
So I think that...
So once a month, people should also have maybe a lunch with the planning minister or their council planner and get top of the pile.
That becomes more difficult. But, certainly I think even at that very, very early stage in your development career, you can start building great relationships. And, I put myself out there when I was at Stockland. I jumped on the Outlook committee for UDIA. And, the people that I sat on that committee with are now running businesses and we're still great friends. And, it started from just wanting to organise some drinks after work for an industry event. So I think putting yourself out there and just not underestimating how powerful the relationships can be. The reality is it's a small industry.
Mm-hmm. Everybody knows everybody. Definitely do.
Yeah. And
everybody's worked with everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody's placed everybody.
Correct. So, you've got to be really conscious that you're building quality relationships and potentially not using your position as a developer or as a way to just get stuff done and not forget about the people that have helped you got there.
I want to know what's next for ABN.
Well, yeah, it's interesting time. I think, we're kind of, I guess as a business, ABN as a brand is kind of, not something that we celebrate. It's really about the retail brands being boutique and Homebuyers Centre. I think we're a bit of a duck on the pond at the moment. Like we're really trying to make sure that, we're just maintaining just this beautiful, calm, serene little duck on top of the water and we're absolutely going bananas underneath. But the reality is, building at the moment through the environment we have, we're really proud of the way we're going about it. And ultimately, if you've got happy customers and getting good quality homes, then you don't need to spend a lot of money on marketing because they're telling their friends and we're getting on and doing more of it. So for us, I think there's some exciting next generation discussions. You look at areas of prefabrication, sustainability, spec housing, just higher density than what we're already doing. They're all exciting next phases. But is it the right timing to be launching head on into innovation? I think at the moment with affordability and so much variables, there's a lot more we think we can do within our current business model. We've gone into regional Victoria pre-COVID. We're building a business down in Gippsland. There's a lot more we're doing within the brands. So, for us, really it's like we've got this great footprint and a great team. We think there's a lot we can do within our existing business model and just do it better. And I think that's one of the challenges that builders have faced through that very inflated, supercharged, incentivised world was, a lot of builders were tempted to take on too much. And I think that's one thing that I know we really were strict with is kind of you can only do what you can do and take on what you can put your hand on your heart and deliver. And
do you think that's going to come back? I hope it's not the highly incentivised kind of retail.
No, I think we've learned a lot from that. I feel like it just ran on for a bit too long. I think it was the right decision at the time.
It loses value though in market after a while, doesn't it? Because people come to expect. So this is talking about offering $100,000 worth of upgrades for $20,000, or land developers offering $10,000 rebates. But
it's more, I'm about to buy a house. I'm about to book an appointment with Resolve.
Get that. We had a really great sales meeting last week, and one of our guys, he's like, "Do you want a discount or do you want a house?" I think in the current environment, there's a real value to the proposition of a builder that just is doing good stuff and just doing what they've kind of been contracted to do. And there's a value in that in the current environment. And I think the whole industry's got a lot of work to do in getting people's trust back. I think our biggest competitor is the established market. And at the moment, our product's overpriced, takes too long, it's got too much risk. There's a lot of reasons why you'd go and buy something done. So I think it's something as a collective industry we need to work on, and not blaming anyone. Like, it's just been an unforeseen environment that we've traded through. But I think it'll take time to really get that fellowship back at high volume. But I think at the end of the day, we've got this beautiful advantage of affordability with the right design, and that's what I think my focus certainly has been, is how can we use the land sufficiently as possible and build a beautiful home for someone that's not going to cost a fortune.
Oscar, have you taken any risks in your career, and have they paid off? Yeah,
I think leaving a business that you genuinely love was a risk. So I left Stockland at a time where I was really, being well supported by the business, had a great opportunity, but for me it was, what more is out there, and this kind of, definitely there was a push to see what else is out here, because I could see a really clear path with Stockland. They're obviously a fabulous business to work for, and a lot of the people that I'm working with are still in there. But for me, it was about taking a risk to see something different, and ultimately, I think for me, my journey means that I'm a well-rounded property professional now that kind of has seen a few different parts of what we do as an industry. And ultimately, I think that just means that I'm making better decisions today because I can kind of see, both businesses and what's motivating them, because it's very different. The expectations of a listed developer and their results is totally different to what a smaller private want from their development. And that means that as a builder, we can engage with those two developers totally differently, because they've got totally different outcomes that they want to achieve. So for me, certainly it's been a journey, but that was probably the biggest risk that I'd taken. But
so what's next for Oscar Stanley?
I think there's some pretty exciting opportunities. I mean, I look at the medium term for Melbourne property and Victorian property. I think it's super exciting. I think the pressures that we're seeing at the moment around rental vacancies, the pressures we're seeing that are going to be further amplified by immigration, the social housing side of what's happening as a crisis. There's so much opportunity out there. For ABN, it's just ensuring we don't try and do too much too quickly, and it's always been a methodology that just incremental growth over time is probably the best way forward. And when you're lurching into different markets and different strategies too quickly, ultimately something breaks. So for us, it's just about steady as she goes at this point. But I'm very, very much feel a part of that future of the business, and I'm super excited about the future.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Oscar, thank you so much for your time this morning. We have loved chatting to you.
It's been great.
Oh,
really
thank
fun.
you. Oh, I've loved
Have
it.
you had fun?
I've actually had a ball.
Can you believe we've been chatting for an hour?
No, time flies.
It does.
But I do love talking about me.
we
So
love talking
we all-
about you as well.
So,
But please come back and come on our podcast again.
God, phase
Well,
2.
I think I'm going to book an appointment with Resolve.
Okay.
Because I have $5,000 and if I can buy a house tomorrow,
And I'm
Seriously.
taking Nikita to Highlands, so
if-
it's all full
we're
circle.
all winning.
All right, this is a deal. If you buy a house off us, I won't charge for my next appointment.
Okay, good.
All
Great,
good?
because you're too expensive and times are tough.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. We hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Thank you also to our sponsors, Polka Dot Property, a small but mighty marketing consultancy connecting people to place.
And Scouted, your go-to for property and construction recruitment. To scout is to seek, to be scouted is to be found. Also, a big thank you to Central House for letting us use their beautiful podcast studio.
If you'd like to get involved, you can reach out to Nikita and I at the masterplannedpodcast@gmail.com.
Make sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
See you next time.
Bye.